cry.
Okay.
We'll do a very short Jai Madhava and then we'll jump in. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavalabha Girivaradhari Gopi Janavalabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Rajajana Ranjana Yasodanandana Rajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Okay, thank you for the opportunity. We're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 7, Text 7. Here we go. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Dirayat. Adha Shayanasya Shishodanopaka Pravala Mridvangi Hatam Vivartata Vidvastanana Rasakupya Bhajanam Vyatasta Chakraksha Vibhinna Kubaram. Adha Shayanasya, who was put underneath the handcart, Shishaho, of the child, Anaha, the cart, Alpaka, not very much grown, Pravala, just like a new leaf, Mridu Angri Hatam, struck by his beautiful, delicate legs, Vyavartata, turned over and fell down, Vidvasta, scattered, Nana Rasa Kupya Bhajanam, utensils made of various metals, Vyatyasta, dislocated, Chakra, Aksha, the two wheels in the axle, Vibhinna, broken, Kubaram, the pole of the handcart. Mani Mandri, could you turn me down a little bit? I can hear myself in the other room. Thank you. Yes, Lord Sri Krishna was lying down underneath the handcart in one corner of the courtyard, and although his little legs were as soft as leaves, when he struck the cart with his legs, it turned over violently and collapsed. The wheels separated from the axle, the hubs and spokes fell apart, and the pole of the handcart broke. On the cart there were many little utensils made of various metals, and all of them scattered hither and thither. Purport. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur has commented on this verse as follows. When Lord Krishna was of a very tender age, his hands and legs resembled soft new leaves. Yet simply by touching the handcart with his legs, he made the cart fall to pieces. It was quite possible for him to act in this way, and yet not exert himself very much. The Lord in his Vamana avatar had to extend his foot to the greatest height to penetrate the covering of the moon. When the Lord killed the gigantic demon Hiranyakashipu, he had to assume the special bodily feature of Nrsingadev. But in his Krishna avatar, the Lord did not need to exert such energy. Therefore, Krishna is to Bhagavan Swayam. Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself. In other incarnations, the Lord had to exert some energy according to the time and circumstances, but in this form, he exhibited unlimited potency. Thus, the handcart collapsed, its joints broken, and all metal pots and utensils scattered. The Vaishnav Toshini remarks that although the handcart was higher than the child could easily touch the wheel of the cart, and this was sufficient to send the demon down to the earth. The Lord simultaneously pushed the demon to the earth and superficially broke the handcart. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Katamayam Yadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Uta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagajatam Sahagana Raghunatham Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Shri Mate Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gaudavani Pacharine Nirvishesha Sunnavadi Pastitadi Shataine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Gaur Premanandi Haribo. So it's a very interesting verse. I'm always struck by these particular pastimes. In Mani Mandir, I can still hear myself very loud and clear, believe it or not. Yes, I love the descriptions of Krishna as a baby because he's the most powerful as it's being relayed here. He's most complete in his opulences, but still he exhibits these characteristics and traits that make him so sweet and relatable and like a baby. I believe it's earlier, maybe it's just after, but we hear about how Krishna and Balaram, when they were first starting to stand up, they would put their hand on a table, and then as they were trying to extend their legs would be shaking like leaves in the wind, and because they're struggling to stand up. And so of course they're supremely powerful, but for the sake of exchanging the most intimate and intense form of love, they accept these forms and these qualities that facilitate that. So I'm always curious about what the relationship is between that love and spiritual perfection. You know, we understand Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and we also understand he has a special characteristic of being extraordinarily, especially lovable. And so what is the relationship there? And we get it right at the offset of the Bhagavatam with the verse, Savaya Pumsam Puro Dharmo Yato Bhaktir Doksaje Ahoitikiya Pratiyataya Yatma Suprasidati. That the supreme occupational duty, which basically means the best thing you could do, is simply to cultivate love, that divine love for Krishna. So we understand also from a practical level that this is also, love is supreme. John Coltrane said it, but we also understand just from our own experience that there isn't anything that's more all-consuming than love. Even something like fear, it may be consuming in one sense for a short amount of time, but then it fades away, right? You're not going to be perpetually scared for, days and days on end. Or if you are, it's more like this kind of numb thing in the back of your mind, not necessarily like you're completely freaking out at all times. But with love, you can be, at least when it's pure, or as close as when it's closer to being pure, then you are actually kind of freaking out in love at all times, right? You can't stop thinking about the person, everything you see, everything you smell, everything you taste, everything that you come in contact with reminds you of the person. And so in that sense, it's all consuming. Even when you're scared, you may still be willing to, let's say, eat so that you can kind of numb the fear, numb the pain a little bit, to sleep if you can, just to kind of get out of that state. But when you're in love, you have no desire to sleep anymore, because your reality is much better than whatever your dreams could have been. And eating becomes something that's happening maybe in the background somewhere. You see devotees who are on a very advanced level, they tend to forget to eat, or at least don't really make eating such a priority of their lives. Or if they do, then they do it out of love, in that they're making sure they are eating exactly on time. They're eating really good things because it will facilitate their loving service. And so with love, it's a completely different kind of force that we're not used to seeing elsewhere, in the sense that it's completely all consuming and all encompassing. So if we understand love is supreme, then it only makes sense that the supreme form of the divine then is that form through which, or with which, we can exchange the most intimate, intense form of love. And so that's where we come in contact with Krishna. Because we understand that the supreme, that the absolute truth has three different aspects. Vedanti tat tattva vidas tattvam yajkanam advayam brahmeti paramatmeti bhagavaniti shabdati. There's Brahman, this impersonal energy, divine energy. There is Paramatma, which is the localized form of the divine, existing within the heart of every living being. And then there's Bhagavan, or the supreme personality of Godhead. And so the supreme personality of Godhead is Krishna. And why is it Krishna? Why isn't it Vamanadev or Nrsingadev? Of course, they're all Krishna in their own way, but specifically the form of Krishna is the supreme personality. And as we're seeing here, based on that verse 126, and also throughout the Bhagavatam, it's because of the special capacity that Krishna has to love and to be loved, right? Because Krishna is a little baby and he's struggling to stand up, or because he has these delicate, soft, leaf-like legs, fresh legs, it creates this kind of relationship that is extremely intimate, and that's not possible with other forms of the divine. So that's what's being alluded to here, that Krishna is this special form of the divine. He's extremely simple in a lot of ways. But at the same time, despite his simplicity, he's also exhibiting complete opulence, right? In that he's doing all these incredible things. And well, one may say that other incarnations also did incredible things, like Vamanadev sticking his leg out and poking a hole in the universal shell, or Nrsingadev manifesting this never before seen form and taking down the most powerful person probably of all time. But Krishna does these extraordinary things as well, but he does them without needing to exhibit any kind of extra capacity, right? He does it just kind of nonchalantly. He does it inconceivably. There's many examples of this, especially the demons he kills, right? He doesn't take on some kind of Nrsingadev-like form to kill them. He just punches them in the collarbone, or kicks him in the head or something like that. Very simple. And that too, it facilitates this loving exchange that's constantly going on in Vrindavan. One of my favorite examples of this is his lifting of Govardhan Hill, right? It would have been really weird. Like if you think about it, Krishna is just a kid at this time, but somehow or other he's lifting up the hill so that it's above all the heads of all the Brajbasis. So how does that work? Because he's, theoretically shorter than everybody else, but just by sticking his arm up, then he's creating an umbrella that's able to be above everyone's head without everyone having to like crouch down or anything like that. And so it would have been kind of awkward if Krishna just started like extending his arm upward, and it just you had like an extendo arm, and it made that happen like that. But no, by his mystic power, he was able to do it, right? Because Krishna can do anything that he likes, and he makes the rules anyway. So in other forms of the divine, he extends himself in some kind of way like that, and it's for a different kind of purpose, right? Devotees of Vishnu or Nrsingadev or Vamanadev, they're in a different kind of mood than the devotees of Krishna. With Krishna, the idea is to love him as much as possible. And so Krishna facilitates that kind of loving exchange. And he does so with his opulences. And despite his supreme opulences, still he is retaining his position as this extremely simple, lovable, coward boy or husband, right? And there's so many beautiful examples of this. So many favorites amongst the Vaishnavas. I could think of a few being when he is crying in fear of Mother Yashoda, when she's coming to beat him with a stick, and he starts crying, and there's a whole song written about that, and it's a great song. And we sing it for Kartik. He's also writing to Mother Rukmini, Queen Rukmini, before he finally met up with her, that he's unable to sleep because he's thinking about her so much. This is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He can have anything or anybody that he wants practically, but he's telling Rukmini that he's unable to sleep at night because he's thinking about her. Another example is when he gets scared that his friends are going to stop playing with him if he goes in. I forget exactly which pastime it's a part of, but it's Mother Yashoda is calling him in, saying, Krishna and Balaram, you guys aren't street boys. You have to come in now and get dressed and take a bath and have dinner with Nanda Maharaj. And then once he starts going in, then his friends say, hey, look, if you stop playing with us now, then we're not going to play with you again. And so then he gets scared and he goes back and plays with them. Can anybody else think of any other examples of Krishna behaving like an ordinary person for the purpose of exchanging love?
How about the fruit seller pastime?
Yes. Do you want to say more about that?
I just think it's very sweet because he's acting like a little child in the sense that he's letting only what would fit in the palm of a baby, in terms of the grains, and he's letting them fall, and he's kind of having like that whole sweet exchange of like a baby trying to imitate adults, and it's just it's one of my favorites. I absolutely adore it.
Yeah, there's that really nice picture at the Bhakti Center of that pastime. Krishna's like basically naked and he's running out and he's got maybe 2 grains left in his palm. The fruit seller takes it. And yeah, what a great example of the exchange of love that facilitated as well with the fruit seller. Krishna Daya Prabhu?
Yes, Prabhu. So you're saying he lifted Govardhan Hill so easily without any pain. But we see another photo also, Krishna lifting Nanda Maharaja's sandals on his head. And then it is described, that pastime is described elaborately by some devotees. So he feels it, very difficult to lift that. And then Nanda Maharaj is very happy with that.
Yeah, that's another picture in the Bhakti Center, I think, where he's got the chappals on his head. Yeah, or when they ask him to bring something, but he thinks it's too heavy for him, and so he just kind of like, what does he do? He like beats his chest and he just kind of like grunts and it's like shows his strength without needing to show it through lifting the thing. So So yes, this loving exchange is available. And the way we develop it is by waging a kind of ecstatic war on Maya. And it's a day-to-day battle. I'm sure we've all experienced many victories and defeats, but it comes down to simple choices that we make on a daily basis, between over recreating, because of course recreation is something we should do in Bhagavad Gita. That is, it says we should not recreate too much or too little, but there's always the borderline between laziness or gluttony, over enjoyment, and actually staying balanced. And sometimes it really comes down to that choice if we're going to keep doing whatever we're doing, or we're going to hear and chant instead. We have that choice to make. We have the choice: are we going to eat the pizza at the party, or are we not going to eat the pizza at the party because it's cooked outside, and we should generally avoid outside meals and stuff like that as far as possible. We have the choice if we're going to do whatever it takes to wake up on time. Everybody has different number of hours of sleep that they need on a given night. But we have that choice if we're going to consciously choose to get those hours and then wake up, or if we're going to hit the snooze and keep going. And these all may seem like very mundane things, but these are examples of devotional service, making that choice to give Krishna pleasure instead of indulging in illusory pleasures on our end. And the thing is, it feels like poison at first to make those choices, but it's always nectar in the end. It's always a lot more enjoyable that the pleasure of austerity than the pleasure of illusory sensory stimulation. In the end, it always feels a lot better. It's just a matter of embracing the poison at first. And that's a mantra I've been trying to remember as I move about this war against Maya, is to embrace the poison. And it sounds a little intense, but really what it means is to accept pleasure, to accept the highest pleasure, because that's what it says in the Gita, that it's poison at first, but it's nectar in the end. And so by embracing that poison, by not denying it, by not trying to lie to myself and tell myself, oh well, it'll be enjoyable in the short term, but just accepting, no, this is going to feel like something I can't do at first, or something I shouldn't do, or my mind will try and make so many excuses why I should eat the pizza, or press the snooze button. If I know that no, it's gonna feel a little painful at first, but it's going to be pleasurable at the end, then it's easier to embrace and to get through. And it's a fact. It's something we can all experience. Tapo divyam putrika yena sattvam sudyadhyasmad brahmasakyam tanantam, a divine austerity, by accepting things favorable to Krishna consciousness, which often means rejecting things unfavorable. Then we develop this brahmasakyam, this spiritual happiness, which continues forever and is not limited by contact with sense objects, which is always temporary and fleeting. So yes, by foregoing illusory pleasures for Krishna's pleasure, then the process of Krishna consciousness becomes very enjoyable. And then we see people who really enjoy austerity like that, like Adi Purush Prabhu, so many of our spiritual teachers, spiritual masters. I mean, it's the thing, right? In the Bhagavad Gita, it says austerity is the wealth of the Brahmanas. And it's what gives them their Brahma Tejas, their power, their spiritual potency. It comes from working out your spiritual muscles in this way. In order to gain muscle, you have to put a strain on yourself. You have to accept some pain in the short term. In the long term, you get stronger. You're able to tolerate more, and it actually becomes more enjoyable. just to exercise. And so the same thing goes for Krishna consciousness. By straining ourselves a little bit in the beginning, then we develop a kind of yoga balena, spiritual strength, and ultimately we develop bhakti. Along with that, of course, we have to avoid offenses and neglect the tendency to criticize others. But by doing that, it's a very simple process. By accepting things favorable, and it's relatively obvious for the most part when something is favorable to my bhakti versus when it's not favorable. So by accepting the favorable things, rejecting the unfavorable things as far as possible, being honest with ourselves all along the way, and avoiding offenses to devotees, then we steadily make progress. And as one really amazing advanced devotee who I met in Miami told me, his name's, I guess I could say his name. His name's Dharma Prabhu. He's a Prabhupada disciple. He joined the Miami temple, I believe in 1976 or something, 75, 76. And for anyone who's ever been there to Coconut Grove, there's 3 gigantic altars. And so at the time there was lots of pujaris, but as time went on, then many left, and now it's actually just him. And so he's been the head pujari, pretty much the only pujari. It's him and his wife worshiping those 3 huge altars, 3 deities there. Well, it's more. It's Jagannath, Baladev, Subhadra, Gauranitai, and Radha Krishna. He worships all of them now for 30 years. Every single day, he's either on the altar or making the garlands for the deities. And I got a chance to speak with him. And he's older now, of course, probably in his mid-70s. But still so enthusiastic, and you could see he's enjoying the austerity of waking up early every single day and serving their lordships, and that being his life. Simple life. The temple pays for his, basic living expenses, and he just worships the deities. And I could see in his eyes, in his voice, in his entire countenance that he was someone who was at a very high level, by my estimation. And I was very impressed just by his being. And so I asked him, how do you do it? How are you able to stay in Krishna consciousness for your entire life and advance like this? And he very humbly replied to me something along the lines of, well, you read the Nectar of Devotion, and you can read about the different stages that you go through in Krishna consciousness. And if you stick to the process, then you'll be able to watch yourself go through those stages and gradually develop higher and higher levels of Krishna consciousness. With a smile on his face and reddened eyes. And so it was very assuring to me that, yes, the process obviously works. I mean, we've all seen in our own lives how we're not the same person we used to be before we started practicing. But yeah, if we stick to it honestly, sincerely, and without criticizing devotees, and avoiding that negative mentality in general towards others, then it's a steady march towards success. So I will stop there for questions, or comments, reflections, corrections, and yes, we'd love to hear from you. Yes, Krishna Daya Prabhu.
Thank you, Prabhu, for the nice discussion. So you were mentioning the point that, okay, you try to accept the tough part of the austerity, you were saying poison. So, and learn to embrace it. And then it's beginning poison in the beginning and it appears later better. So, Prabhu, like the mood with which we approach this, so does it should be like, okay, within short period of time, I'll be happy. Initially it is tough, but within a short period of time, I will be happy. So if we approach with that mood, sometimes we don't know when we will be happy because of various factors. So we'll be getting frustrated. So I'm just curious, can you tell me like how is the mood? Yeah, we know that it's beginning, it's tough in the beginning, but so with what mood we should accept this path?
Yes. Well, in the Shikshashtakam, we hear that we should continue on with patience and enthusiasm. So those are two special qualities that I found help in the process of embracing the poison, so to speak. As far as I've realized, we should also go on with a mood of personalism as well, so we don't become like dry in the sense of, well, I'm doing this for my spiritual master, or I'm doing this for Lord Chaitanya, I'm doing this for Lord Nityananda, I'm doing this for Krishna even. And when we imbibe that kind of mentality, then it becomes a little sweeter as well, because then it's really, that's, I mean, you think about, I mean, we hear the word devotional service so much, but what is devotional service? It means you're doing these things, you're accepting austerity, or you're doing it in a mood of devotion. But devotion to who? It's not just like, oh, I'm going to do it, you know, or I'm doing it like, you know, this is for Krishna. But no, to actually be thinking while you're washing the pots or out on the street or whatever you're doing, that I'm doing this for my spiritual master's pleasure. I know this will please him. I'm doing this for Lord Chaitanya. I'm a servant of Lord Chaitanya. I'm carrying out his order. This is for you. One of my really close mentors, friends named Jai Chaitanya, he was at one point doing more books than anybody had ever done before. He was #1 book distributor in the world. And my other friend asked him, you know, how are you able to do so many books? It was like, you know, he would be out with a group of devotees and they'd all be doing a lot of books at a festival or something. But JC would always be doing like way more than everybody else. And he said, well, you know, after every time I distribute a book, then I say to Krishna, that one was for you. That's for you, Krishna. And you could imagine the sweetness then that starts to be exchanged. It's an austerity, you know, being in the crowd, you know, and stopping people rejecting you, people, you know, laughing at you. It's like, what are you doing? You know, but to add that element of sweetness, and even when you get rejected or even when it's difficult, still the sweetness is there because it's still, I'm doing this for you, Krishna. I'm performing this austerity for you. I don't care what anybody says, what anybody does, whether I'm successful or unsuccessful in terms of, you know, book going out, you know, or not. But I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna approach the next person for you, for your pleasure, because I know it pleases you. Because Krishna says that Lord Chaitanya says he's an anxiety for conditioned souls to come back. Because we're relieving the anxiety of Lord Chaitanya by doing that kind of service. So yeah, that's my understanding. That's my realization that we should make it as personal as possible and actually remember who we're doing it for. And the more that we're able to remind ourselves and do it in that mentality, and the more we're actually performing bhakti, like pure bhakti. And then therefore the more enjoyable it is because we're properly situated.
Thank you so much, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
I have a reflection, Anupama Prabhu. You were talking how life with Krishna is so much better and more enjoyable than the dreams we may have. And just this morning, I had a terrible nightmare. It's my recurring nightmare kicked in again. I probably ate something before I went to bed. So I had a dream that I went back to my office work. And I felt so like it felt like I was suffocating. I was so I was feeling constrained, choking. I said, "Oh my God, how could I shouldn't have done this. I can't believe I did this. I can't believe I went back there." And then I woke up and I had my japa time, the class time, and it literally feels so much better. It's like day and night. So thank you very much. I had a very practical experience of the point that you made. So that's Krishna miracle. Just wanted to reflect that. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, you could do a comparative study. That's why I like in the Bhagavad Gita, and all over Prabhupada's books, he's always saying this is a science. You can run an experiment and see which is actually better. Do we actually feel better in Krishna consciousness or in material enjoyment? And if we're honest and we actually apply ourselves to the process, then we could see clearly that, oh, Krishna consciousness is much better. There's this famous lecture in Fiji that Tamal Krishna Maharaj gave, and many of you have probably seen it because it's one of the few videos of Tamal Krishna Maharaj speaking on YouTube. But this man is a Sai Baba follower, and he's challenging Tamal Krishna Maharaj about Sai Baba, and Tamal Krishna Maharaj says that I challenge you to start following the four regulative principles, chanting 16 rounds of japa daily, and then if after 3 months when I come back you don't feel a huge you don't feel like a huge surge of, you don't feel better, something like that, you don't feel more content and happier, then I will personally write you a check for $30,000. Like that. Says that to the guy, and the guy is like, okay, I will try. Of course. But yeah, it's a fact, if we actually apply ourselves to the process, then we feel better.
So, but yeah, it does feel better, but why do we still go for our old habits? Why is that happening?
Well, in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says it's our eternal enemy, lust, that we're constantly battling. So it's a war, and sometimes Maya wins, and sometimes Krishna wins, or the soul wins. So lust is always there. It's our enemy. We're constantly battling it, but it gradually lessens its grasp on us if we practice properly. That's one aspect. The other aspect is we've been here for an innumerable amount of lifetimes enjoying in the material world, right? So there's 1,000 Divya Yugas in one day of Brahma. One Divya Yuga is 4,320,000 years. So there's 1,000 of those in one day of Brahma. So is that like 400 billion or something? Is it 4 billion for one day of Brahma? 4 billion years? 4 billion something, probably more. That's one day. And then, Brahma has regular months and years, and he's about middle-aged. And so for literally practically an infinite number of lifetimes, we've been enjoying in the material world. And now all of a sudden we're stopping it, and we're trying to give all that up and just live for Krishna's enjoyment. So, in previous ages, people had to achieve that ability to relinquish material enjoyment had to meditate underwater for thousands of years, or sit within a fire, in the sun while the sun's beating down on you for an extended period of time. These intense austerities and like abrasive methods of relinquishing material enjoyment. But now we can achieve that same end, and even a higher end, by just chanting Hare Krishna and serving the devotees and carrying out the order of our spiritual master and not committing offenses. And so it's a testament to how powerful the process is, that even if we're just getting started on our spiritual path after billions and billions and practically infinite number of lifetimes, still relatively quickly we can give up material enjoyment and start following the four regulative principles and leading a life in Krishna's service. But yeah, the conditioning is still there because it's just been so long. We have so much momentum going in one direction. To stop it and start going the opposite direction, it could take some time, but it is happening. And considering the time span we've been here, at this lifetime, this few years that I've been practicing, is just not even a blink. It's less than a blink. It's like a nanosecond, and still there's a huge impact already. So, but yes, it is a process.
Yeah, Angelica told me that I'm having this recurring nightmare because there's a message that is yet to be processed by me. So thank you, Angelica, for that. And I'm going to pray to Paramatma, to Srila Prabhupada, to Krishna, to understand what the message is and to process it and move on for goodness sake. And maybe Krishna will give me another nightmare, but not that one. That one is terrible. Right, Andrea has her hand raised.
Yes, Hare Krishna, Anupama, Das Prabhu. I know that I always ask this every class, but I would love to hear a recent Harinam inspiring story, just experience. I know I'm like a broken record. I always want to hear about your stories.
Okay. To remember which ones I already told. But yeah, one of my favorite ones, I mean, I really like the ones where they have like a really happy ending. So I could tell you guys about one devotee, and now she's a devotee. She had been going through a rough time in school, was in Miami, and then she wound up coming to New York. But in the meantime, someone had reached out to her through Instagram and suggested that she get into meditation. And she was like, yeah, I guess that's something I could probably do. And he was like, yeah, we do a meditation class and we do a wisdom discussion group on once a week. So she started going to those, and it turned out it was a Krishna conscious thing. It was Bhagavad Gita as it is that they were studying. So she was into it, and they were taking a very kind of laissez-faire approach, though, and not getting so into like what Krishna consciousness is, and what who Prabhupada is and what Hare Krishna is. It was more just kind of like, we're going to study this book and go over, some of the tenets of spiritual philosophy. So she liked it a lot, and she moved to New York, and she was strolling through Washington Square Park, and then lo and behold, she came upon a book table. It said free meditation books, and she's like, oh, well, I really like this meditation book I'm studying now, and this one would probably be cool too. So she walked up to the table, and she starts looking at the books. And of course, I tell her, we're giving out books on meditation, and you should check this one out. It's called the Bhagavad Gita. It's the original spiritual wisdom text. And she's like, oh yeah, I have that one. And I'm like, okay, cool. A lot of people say they have the Bhagavad Gita. So I'm like, well, this is a really cool version because, it gives you the Sanskrit and then the English. And she's like, no, yeah, I have that copy. I'm like, oh, great. I was like, well, have you read it? And she's like, oh, I'm in a study group with it, and I read it once a week, and I really like it a lot. And I'm like, oh, well, my name's Anupama. What's your name? And she told me her name. And so we connected her to some of the girls there at the Bhakti Center, and she started coming to the programs. And then after some time of getting to know the devotees and devotional souls, she moved to Gita Nagari, and she was living in Gita Nagari for some time. And then she moved into the Bhakti Center. And her name is Julia. Those who know Julia, this is Julia's story. Hope she doesn't mind I'm telling. But yes, and she spent a lot of time at Bhakti Center and studying in the ashram there, doing service. And she's developed into this incredible, really sweet and sincere devotee. And it was amazing, though, just to see her progression and how Krishna guided her to the right people and resources in like a perfect way. You could see with a lot of devotees, Krishna almost like puts them on a one-way street where it's just like you just have to keep going forward. That's how it was with me. I had no choice in becoming a devotee. I mean, I resisted very strongly, but ultimately Krishna made it so I had no choice.
When you have no choice, it's called causeless mercy.
Yeah. Yes. That's what I required. I required that. So Krishna was very merciful in just giving me his causeless mercy.
Great. Okay, devotees, it's Friday. We're over time, but it's Friday. Happy Friday, as they say on Facebook. We can take one more reflection. Or unmute yourself. It's Friday. We're almost through the week. Should I start calling out? I'm joking, I won't. Anupama Prabhu, you want to make a closing remark, a punchline?
I'll just say,
hold it. Our subtle Angelika is trying to glorify Krishna. Angelika, do it.
Hare Krishna. I just wanted to make a short comment, which is simply reflecting on the work that we are asked to do and the work that we need to do to really start living instead of being just, walking zombies. But even the fact that seeing the world around us, which is the opposite of the values that we are trying to follow and surrender to, points out to the extreme necessity of association and of positive association, of just truly surrounding ourselves with devotees who we can reveal our hearts to. And also the image comes to me of how it's recommended for us that when the seed of Bhakti Lata Beach is already in the ground and it's sown, what we are asked to do is actually to fence it, and we fence it with we put a fence around it with the association of devotees and sadhus.
Thank you, Angelika, for fencing our bhakti creepers. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Very important point.
Punchline, still waiting for your punchline.
Okay. I will say, Parama Karuna Pahu Dui Jana Nitai Gaura Chandra. Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda are supremely merciful. Parama Karuna means a supreme mercy. So we should all, myself included, take shelter of Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda in whatever way we can think of. We should rack our brains for ways we can further take shelter of them and be happy. Hare Krishna.
Great, wonderful. Mic drop. Okay, Anupama Prabhu ki jai, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, everybody on this call ki jai. See you again tomorrow. How wonderful is Krishna. Betty, Hare Krishna. Good seeing you. Rameshwar Naik, Hare Krishna.
Bhakti Devi. Bhakti Devi.
Bhakti Devi, Hare Krishna. Bhakti Devi. All right. Please forgive our offenses.
No problem. It's my work phone, so okay. Thank you.
All right. Hare Krishna.